Hello, everybody. Welcome.
Hey.
Wait a little bit for people to join, last joiners, and then we'll kick off. All right. I feel like we are all set to begin, and sometime kicking things off will make the others come. So thank you so much for being here with us today. Good morning, good afternoon for some of us. Welcome to this webinar, AI and Sustainability, Building Trust Beyond the Buzzwords. I'm Noemi Billion, Head of Business Development North America at Greenly, and I'll be your moderator today. At Greenly, we see that sustainability now touches every part of the enterprise: supply chain, finance, operations, HR, investor relations. And we've seen that really in each of these conversations, AI has entered the room as well. And we hear promises of automation, better forecasting, faster compliance. But alongside the buzz, there's a harder truth really to that, is that most companies are still figuring out how to use AI responsibly and effectively. And so even fewer are being transparent about it. So that's what we're here to unpack today. For the next hour, we'll look at the opportunities AI brings to sustainability, reporting, and also decarbonization strategy. From centralizing data and cutting reporting cycles to improve accuracy in decision making. We'll also face the challenges head on, AI's environmental footprint, the risk of greenwashing, and the rising demands from the different stakeholders. So to explore this, I am joined by two exceptional speakers. First, Laura Golly, Strategic Growth Advisor, Gen AI Global, and MIT Professional Education, who works with business leaders around the world on responsible AI adoption, governance, and trust.
Hi, Noemi, and thank you for having me today.
Thank you, Laura.
So excited to be here. Thanks for organizing all of this, Noemi.
Yeah, and so Alexis Norman, CEO and co-founder of Greenly, who's helped thousands of organizations turn climate commitments into measurable actions. And he's leading our AI integration strategy. So it's great to have him here.
Look, I'm excited. We have some great use cases at Greenly, but I think the object of our discussion is to go beyond our use cases and discuss the use cases in general. So super cool.
Definitely. What's to expect in our session today? We'd love that session to be very interactive as much as possible. So feel free to engage in the chat box. So first, we'll cover the environmental footprint of AI itself, and Alexei will be able to enlighten us on this and how to factor that into your sustainability strategy. Then we'll show how AI, when designed for ESG, can take weeks off your reporting cycle and improve accuracy. And then we'll talk frankly about the risks, how AI-generated outputs can create greenwashing if not backed by verifiable data. And we'll align this with the stakeholders' expectations as well. And finally, we'll share a practical three-part framework for AI-driven sustainability storytelling. That's data-driven, transparent, and targeted. So let's deep dive in. So I'll start with just a little introduction to set the scene here. When we talk about AI in this webinar, what do we actually mean? So when you strip away the hype and it boils down really to AI being a set of technologies, machine learning, large language models, LM, optimization engines that can really spot patterns, have a great memory, and summarize vast amount of data, and even sometimes draft human quality text. So these, the most famous of these right now is large language models, so LLMs. It's incredible pattern recognizers trained on huge data sets of text. And they're usually looking like chatbots, like ChatGPT, for example, or generative AI tools. And so these tools can write, translate, summarize, sometimes code. And this is probably your use of AI in your work currently as a sustainability and compliance professional. We'll verify this in a minute because there's a poll also running in the chat asking what's your use of AI currently and if you're using it for sustainability reporting, for decarbonization. But there's a thing that Jan LeCun points out. He's one of the founder of AI and works at Meta. He really says that these systems are very good at predicting words, but they're not yet capable of true reasoning, judgment, or even planning without help. On their own, they can really guarantee accuracy or auditability, so they're not really designed for the specificity of ESG and sustainability reporting. And this is where companies we see like really takes the most value from AI, specifically in sustainability. They don't just plug in a chatbot, they combine AI speed and scale with domain-specific models, so AI agents specifically for sustainability, that can use and work with structured data and while being really human overseen. So that's the approach that we take. We really use AI in a controlled, secured, and safe environment to produce and draft ESG disclosures, compliance summaries, or investor-ready communication. It's great that we have here with us Laure for just an introductory question. From your experience working with global companies, what's one misconception businesses have about AI capability in sustainability in reporting?
I think AI's capabilities are just incredible. We can do so much, as you mentioned. It's touching every part of the business. It's touching every part of our lives, actually. When it comes to the misconception that I see most of the time, I would say it's the overestimation of its ability to provide perfect answers straight away. AI can process incredible amount of data faster. I can spot patterns that we wouldn't even be able to do manually, right? But it still depends on the quality of the inputs, and it still depends also a lot on the clarity of the problem you're trying to solve, because we know there are a myriad of tools out there. They all do different things, but it's really down to what problems you're trying to solve with it. It's not a plug and play fix usually, and it still requires human oversight, ethical guardrails as well, and alignment, as we say, with real world goals, and that applies to sustainability as well.
And really here, the problem that we're trying to solve is complex. It's sustainability, both planning and reporting is really complex, but it's connected. There are things that overlap, and it's too overlapping to be done manually. We've seen that the regulatory voluntary reporting landscape is growing, and it's more and more complex every year when it wants to evolve. We're seeing simultaneous adoption of CSRD, Californian state regulations, ISSB standard, GRI, and CDP. And each framework, what we've seen is that it has its own structure, but it's the point is that there's a large portion of that requires data that are overlapping. So if you're measuring scope 1, 2, and 3 for CSRD, you have the baseline data for ISSB and GRI. Supply chain data collected for CDP can fit into the SEC's value chain disclosure requirements. Many qualitative disclosures like climate governance, risk management, scenario analysis are also reusable across framework. So the challenge is that without a system to map and manage this overlap, you may end up duplicating work, extracting the same data multiple times, formatting it different for each framework, introducing sometimes inconsistencies and human error. And so we work on systems and AI agents that can identify shared metrics across frameworks. And the idea is to flag the one-to-many reporting opportunities. We also work on models that consolidate all emissions and ESG data into a single verified data set that then we can pick and choose every data points to generate tailored reports for each framework without re-entering or recalculating the same numbers. And that's one of the capabilities that Greenly developed. And so we're lucky here to have Greenly CEO. Alexis, from your perspective leading Greenly, what's driving this surge in AI adoption in corporate sustainability right now?
Yeah, so again, if you think about AI and sustainability, it's really, to me, 4 pillars, right? The one we're discussing now is environmental monitoring and measurement. So, and I can deep dive a little bit into how that works. It's also system optimization and efficiency is the second pillar. R&D innovation, so the actual, not just the reporting, but actually improving stuff, and then supporting behavioral change. If we deep dive on that first pillar, right? Carbon accounting, sustainability reporting is one of the areas, and I can speak to that. There are other ones, right? Like monitoring methane leaks with satellite imagery, biodiversity monitoring. I don't know if you use the app Merlin.
I don't. Can you still guys hear me? I think we lost Alexis for a minute.
To your question, if we deep dive into Greenly, we've used it in several areas.
We can't hear you anymore, Alexis. Maybe you've lost our connection. Now you're muted. Oh yeah.
Okay, am I back? Sorry, for some reason, I'm actually on the Starlink connection deep into the Pyrenees mountains, so we should be okay. But for some reason, my phone connected to my computer and it messed everything up. But I'm back, right?
Yes, you are, Rebecca.
38 degrees outside, 100 degrees Celsius. So I'm right into the heat wave. So it feels this conversation is very real. But to get back to the actual topic, sorry for the interruption. When you just focus on the reporting aspect of things, right, which is of course our specialty, it's very clear that it's all about automating and accelerating tedious human work. So we use AI for that in general. But in our specific case, we're talking about carbon accounting, or you were mentioning CSRD, IFRS. These are very data-intensive processes.
I think we've lost Alexia again, but I wanted to.
Oh. Sorry, it looks like the Starlink connection isn't that good. Am I back?
Yes, you are.
Okay, sorry about this. So I'll try and get right to the point. You're talking about a very, very data-intense process. So the intensity of the data is tracking every single fuel consumption, scope 1, every electricity consumption, scope 2, every other source of indirect emissions, scope 3, all input of purchase of services, goods, and purchases. You're talking millions and millions of transactions. So how do you put this into a reporting system that doesn't take a team of 15 and weeks of work, right? So you have to automate the data ingestion. This is an area where every company has a different format for its data. So if you want to put this into a software, ours or even a competitor's, there's a huge work in terms of structuring data to templates so that the machine can read it, basically. This used to take weeks to humans. We had developed pretty good systems to automatically categorize, but now these AI APIs have come along, And what we had reduced from weeks to days is now reduced to minutes, just formatting data. And now once you have formatted data, you have to convert it into, say, CO2, for example. And the process of carbon accounting is one of taking these often millions of lines, right? What have you purchased? What electricity have you consumed? And then matching it to the conversion factor that translates this into carbon, right? So I bought a ton of steel. What is that in terms of carbon? Or I bought from this particular supplier. So again, machines are pretty good at this, but they're even better now at categorizing, right? And then once you've done this for millions of lines, well, the software structures everything, but now you still have to export this into a report, right? That's one part of the job, but you also have to start making smart recommendations about what you could be doing better. And of course, this is where you have to dwell on a very large pool of accumulated wisdom from working with thousands of customers as to, okay, what are the action plans? What are the alternative suppliers that I can do? So again, all of this is easy if you take it line by line. Becomes very hard if you are accumulating thousands, if not millions of data lines. So this is where these softwares are extremely, these AIs are extremely efficient. Probably was a little too long on this, but in practice, you're really talking a 10 to 100x acceleration. And frankly, for companies, because sometimes they tend to equate sustainability work with reporting on sustainability because it takes 90% of their time. If you're able to compress this, into maybe 20% of their time, they just have so much more resources for the actual work of improving their impact. And so I think it's key to understand. I would say just one more thing on how it's impacted us operationally at Greenly. So of course, this topic is very new to many people. It's even new to our own staff since we've been recruiting a lot. So what we did is we've plugged everything we've learned from a research and methodology perspective, all the reports on the non-confidential part that we've accumulated to essentially serve our chatbots in support. So right now, about 60% of our support tickets, they're handled by an AI. And usually it gives a better response than what it used to be, where you had to have decision trees and get people to, find the right article that explained the right methodology about why you converted a ton of steel into 5 tons of CO2 or something. So it's just 10x faster. But basically, with a team of 10 people in support, you essentially have multiplied their answering capability by 10 to 100. So that's absolutely huge. And they themselves can use AIs to find better answers. So this support aspect is, I guess, where most companies are today. But now we're finding that for some of our, that's the support, the process. We're finding that a lot of our customers want to ask these questions during the meetings themselves. So you can actually start to have AIs that present the results and that will dwell on the thing. And sometimes they do it better than somebody who was just hired a week ago, Again, you still need experts, but it's just more and more of that is getting into automated systems. And the result is you're a company of 200, you're serving 3,000 customers. Well, maybe you could be serving 300,000 customers with the same staff, and I guess people like to talk to humans. They still need to. But if our topic is scaling carbon accounting so that everybody has it, and we get that out of the way and we start focusing on reducing, I think it holds tremendous promises. I'll stop now because I think you have other topics you want to cover, Noemi.
No, it was a great introduction, really. Thank you so much, Alexis, and you're so knowledgeable in this sense with the 3 pillars. So there's speed, there's accuracy, there's the fact that it's a capability multiplier, and there's customer success, which is very central, and most companies are using AI to do that currently. And there's the topic of replacement vs oversight. So
I don't think we're replacing. It's just we do
don't.
more with the same amount of people, and in fact, it allows us to recruit more people doing more stuff.
Exactly. That's our approach at Greenie, because we have these climate experts that are really bringing this wealth into the work. But there are some companies that choose replacement that can happen, and it kind of leads me to this final point of the introduction, that is about trust. Trust is really everything about an AI. We've all come up on a chatbot that was AI. Generated, and some of them are doing a great job. The others, we definitely want to speak to someone afterwards. So there are kind of like three pillars that are building this trust. There's accuracy of each data point when we report, when we want to communicate. There's also transparency. AI is a powerful assistant, but it must not be a black box. So let's just make sure that everything that's generated by the deep learning model, or anything you're using for your carbon footprint assessment, you understand what's going on behind it. And there's security, of course. So these are kind of like the three pillars we're seeing here, and the combination of those three pillars turn your reports and your work into like from compliance documents into really trust building tools that you can use and share with your stakeholders. And I'll add to that we have to acknowledge the paradox that AI can be a major driver of sustainability, but also has its own environmental costs. And because Greenie is expert in carbon footprint assessment, let's kind of deep dive into how do we compute AI's impact on the environment, and how big it is. So maybe I'll give you the floor, Alexi, if you want to share how we do it at Greenly.
Yeah, so of course it's a great topic. I mean, we can dwell more into the present impact of AI on sustainability. It speeds up the reporting and makes data more accurate. Maybe it'll help make new discoveries and so on. We'll get to that. But a lot of this is still in the making. Not everybody has access to it. People may believe me, that things go 100x faster, but most haven't really tried. We only have a few thousand customers. There is an immediate effect of AI today, which is not positive in terms of sustainability. And for the anecdote, 2 years ago, I was invited to join a group of French entrepreneurs visiting a couple luminaries in Silicon Valley, and I actually got to meet Sam Altman a couple weeks after the release of GPT-4. So he was already the talk of the town and explaining all those beautiful things that were coming. But in my role, I asked him, what is the carbon footprint of ChatGPT? And he looked at me and says, "Great question. Frankly, not a lot." And of course, I immediately the statue of the commander kind of got crushed that day, because either he didn't know what he was talking about, and he's a very smart guy, or he was totally minimizing the impact. And it's real and it's huge. And so I think that's what we want to talk about for a second. So the reason at Greenly we know a little bit about this topic is we've helped a lot of tech companies track their carbon footprint. And obviously, these companies, most of their impact is digital. And so we've developed frameworks to really deep dive into the emissions of IT companies. And of course, cloud and data centers are the major part. So as you can see, 60-70%, because they consume so much electricity. Devices are important too, but they tend to be amortized over the time of their use, right? So a computer maybe like something like 200-300 kilograms of CO2, but you use it for 5 years, so you only discount this, a fifth. Digital marketing, of course, all the ads, apps. I think products and services are more now because they embed so much AI, but this slide, needs to be a little reworked. But the point of the matter is most of the emissions comes from cloud or in-house data centers, right? And why is that? Maybe on the next slide, we can deep dive a little bit on that. Well, first of all, You can look at it at a company level, but you can look at it at a macro level, right? Even before AI, the consumption of data centers was plus 10% a year, right, of cloud computing. So plus 10% a year, it means the capacity doubles every 7 years, right? And this was before AI. Now it's more like 20% because there's so much investment in them. So it's absolutely exponential. Um, and to the point that there are countries where the limited electrical capacity means that you have to curb the
Max is gone again. Let's wait a little bit for Starling to reconnect. And we'll take your question.
Yeah, and sorry about this. Apparently, the starting connection in the middle of the Pyrenees isn't that amazing. Okay, am I back? Can you hear me?
Yes, you are. Yes.
Okay. So anyway, it's huge, and it's almost like there's a trade-off between charging your electric car and using data centers for your AI, right? So anyway, we were just reminding people here why this topic is important, because essentially the total electricity output in Western countries is due to double, and a lot of it is in anticipation of construction of new data centers, and not just electrification of your car, of your factory, of everything. So
and maybe for the one that are not too familiar, how do we really practically measure the carbon footprint of AI? What are we talking about?
So we're measuring the carbon electricity. We're essentially measuring the electricity consumption of data centers, because that's where AI happens. And so when you measure extra electricity being consumed, you just look at how many kilowatt hours you have, right? And based on those kilowatt hours, you look at where the electricity is produced. And every grid has what we call electricity intensity emission factor. So in a country like Ireland, where most data centers are in Europe, it's something like 400 or sometimes 500 grams of CO2 per kilowatt hour. And a country like France, where most of the electricity is nuclear, it's something like 30 or 40 grams of CO2 per kilowatt hour. So a factor of 1 to 10. And in the US, it's on average between 200 and 300 grams of CO2. It depends very much on where you are. And essentially, why do these Yeah, so I hope it's not too much of a train wreck, these interruptions. But basically, the electricity intensity, carbon intensity of electricity is dependent on your energy mix. So whether you have a lot of coal and gas in your powering system, or a lot of renewables or nuclear. And so essentially, to sum it up, AI consumes data center bandwidth. Data centers consume electricity, and electricity needs to burn fuel to run. And so depending on the energy mix, you use more data centers. And so what we do is we measure the usage of data centers for each individual company by connecting to the APIs of their cloud providers, so AWS, Azure, Google, you name it. Based on the minute level consumption, we compute the electricity consumption. We also factor in the weight of actually building those data centers, because it's a life cycle analysis. We compute the number of kilowatt hours, and then we multiply these number of kilowatt hours by the electricity intensity based on where the data center is, which is a data that's provided by the consumption APIs. And based on this, we compute the emissions. Now, why is that important? And maybe it's on the next slide, is you can actually have very, very impactful things that you can do about it. which is okay. Well, you can consume less data center, but that's not what's happening, right? Because people want more AI. Whenever they do a saving, they use it for something else. Or you can change where your data centers are to go to a place where the electricity consumes less CO2. And to walk the talk, this is something we did at Greenly. So we had, as a startup, put all our data centers in Ireland when we got started. It was about 50% of our emissions. And despite the fact that we're a fast-growing startup, we divided this by 10. The 50% became a tenth of this because we moved our data centers to France. We actually switched from AWS to Google. I mean, it's by no means an advertisement for one or the other, because you can also find AWS stuff in low carbon places, right? But the point is that's what we did. And it actually helped us save a lot of emissions as a tech company ourselves. So I think that's the key thing to factor in. And of course, this framework for understanding emissions of data centers is also valid for understanding the emissions of AI, because fundamentally they run on cloud data. The only difference is that the top AI platforms are perhaps not as transparent on the electricity usage of data centers as the hyperscalers are. So there are a bit more assumptions to be made when we compute the emissions of ChatGPT versus DeepSeek or other places, which we have done, by the way, in a public study that people can look up.
Yeah. And I think it's giving a lot of different elements of answer to Eva's question in the chat, which is it possible to measure how much one single company added to the data center consumption? So if I'm a company, how much am I responsible for in this given data center?
It is, but I would say it was very measurable for your own data center usage. But now what's happening is that every software is using AI, right? We ourselves are putting AI to just make the whole thing more efficient. And I think there's still a bit of a blind spot into the extra electricity of data center consumption into the AI functions of all softwares. So it's forcing us to update our models, and you can just look at Google, Microsoft. They were among the model companies in terms of decarbonizing their emissions. They had made very strong pledges, and and then suddenly it was totally derailed. So last year they announced increases in their own emissions of plus 30%, plus 40%, essentially because they've been building so much data centers, they've been using so much more cloud computing capacity. So I think it's fair to say that every software embedding AI using these guys are taking a plus 30% increase, right? So we know how to reduce data center emissions by just choosing the right location. But when you use software as a service, it's harder to say that you're reducing your emissions because you don't have so much knowledge on where Google and Microsoft themselves are putting their data centers to, or ChatGPT. It's the same thing. ChatGPT uses Azure. Fortunately, the interruptions don't last more than 10 seconds and you can fill in.
Exactly. We were waiting for a bit. You started to answer another question in the chat that was about, we need to find out where the data center is. It's actually known for you were mentioning Azure for ChatGPT, so it's something that we know and that we can use for the carbon footprint calculation.
But I would add that, when you're using AI for very sensitive data, whether it be DeepSeek, ChatGPT, Miracle with the European player and so on, now they have models that you can localize on your own data centers, because if you're a defense company or the French Secret Services or something. You don't want to be using an open API that trains everybody else. So you can put those models on localized data centers, in which case you have real control over where the data is and what the footprint of that is. But I would just say people have companies have done a very good job at starting to reduce their cloud data center emissions. And the whole AI excitement is such that basically people have forgotten about that aspect of AI, or they haven't totally forgotten, but it's less controllable. And it needs to be part of the conversation for these companies to be more transparent about where the data centers are that are being used to train those models. Because yes, AI can do a ton of amazing things for sustainability, but if we, in the meantime, just burn the planet, it's not going to do us any good.
Yeah, and speaking of global warming, one of the questions in the chat was, what about the use of data? Because it needs to cool down. So the use of water in cooling down the data centers. How can we know about that pollution?
Well, I mean, it's known. We basically, a measure of electricity is a measure of consumption and heat, and of course, the water is used essentially to cool down the data centers. It's just I think we're not as good as calculating it, not because the data is not there, but because there are less compliance frameworks that ask for it. So the hyperscalers, they know very well. And they know for environmental reasons, and they know for cost reasons as well, right? But most companies don't know. So it's more research. It's not as easy. I mean, it's as easily quantifiable as carbon, I would say, but it's just less frequently requested.
Yeah. So super insightful, and let's move on to this part where now we've seen the impact. And I agree, in the chat there are people saying there's more to carbon, there's water, there's social, cultural impact. There's also the fact that clouds, data centers, or AI factories, as we call them now, are big buildings that just are impacting landscapes. And so these are ethical questions that we definitely want to touch on. And the fact that there's still now a huge economical pressure in using AI, and IT CTO are really pursuing this use of AI very much. And that's something at Greeny we're doing it too, because we need to be also at the forefront of that, because we believe by speeding up reporting process, then AI can actually enable us to get to the decarbonization stage, which is really where we want to be. And so I just want Alexis to spend a little bit of time on how can AI boost sustainability, reporting efficiency, accuracy. There were some questions on the chat saying, are your models, are you proprietary of your models? How are you using AI in Greeny? How are you embedding it into the work that we're doing?
No, so absolutely happy to dwell a little bit on this, and this slide gives part of the answer. I think it goes beyond this, but I mentioned the support part already, right? Where we the AI assistant inside our software is basically plugged to every research and methodology question that anyone ever asked at Greenly, and every answer is like immediately accessible, whereas you just had to look for it, and it took ages in the past. So that's the bottom piece, and I think are these proprietary models? Not so much, because most of the emission factors and things are, we're in a business of disclosure. So the expertise, it's about democratizing it, and we're more in charge of the plumbing than the tolling, so to speak. We're not charging for. We're charging for access to our software because it makes things more efficient, but the data itself, we just make it faster to access. I think the upper part where it's more proprietary, right, is that obviously the key to decarbonization, right, is to have more accurate data, more accurate insights, more accurate advice on how to shift your operations, change how you build your product by using less emissive components or pieces, by making your operations more efficient, by using suppliers that are less emissive, and so on. So these choices, right, are very much a function of the accuracy. Oops. Okay. A little. Okay. Can you hear me? Okay. Sorry about all the technical challenges. I hope you. What I was saying is the accuracy of the. I mean the efficiency of the sustainability journey is a function of the accuracy of the data. And so this is where AI essentially the So sorry about this. I'll stop the camera.
It's okay. I think we lost you again. But
yeah, I think I'm back, and I'll be quick and pass the baton over to Laure. But all I'm saying is the accuracy is key. And so we if you save time, you have more time to get more accurate. And so part of what we were saying before is if I collect a lot of data, I have to match it to the right supplier, get supplier level data. And this is where the acceleration gets you faster to a world where you have information on the carbon footprint of every one of your suppliers, every one of your operations with much more accurate data. And this is where you have to sometimes make categorization, probabilistic match, instant data analytics, and this part is just 10x faster. And for fear of being disconnected for another 5 seconds, I'll stop now and let you carry on, Noémie. So sorry about the technical challenges here today.
Okay. Yes, thank you so much, Alex, for those. I wanted to move that conversation towards who's around the table. Let's unpack what investors, regulators, customers now expect from sustainability communication. It can be driven by AI or other means, but it would be really nice for Laure to help us unpack really what are how to compromise trust and AI in the same room.
It's sorry, Laure, but before we move on to that next topic, there's a question about whether AI can be used for the implementation of digital product passports, and I think it's related to what I was saying. So trying to answer very quickly, I mean, the answer is yes, definitely. You know, why are digital product passports important? So
Suspense. All right, I think we've lost him for good. Laure, you know what? Let's take the floor back to us.
Thank you, Noémie.
So, and we'll come back to the question on digital product passport at the end if we have time. Sorry about that.
Yeah, I'll reply in the chat. Sorry about this.
Yeah, great. Let's do that.
Thank you so much. Yes, we talked about stakeholders. You mentioned investors, regulators, customers, you know, and even the internal teams within your own organization. And obviously, the expectations are just rising. They all demand the same thing. They want certainty. They want answers. They want facts. But it's hard to answer that question when we're talking about a technology that evolves so fast that at the end of the day, what we are measuring today might be completely different in a week or in a month's time. So if we look at investors, they just don't want to hear about, you know, a company being responsible and sustainable, but they really want actually proof that actually you are implementing that not only across your reporting, but also if it impacts their results, right? So the consistency is key here when it comes to your reporting, your investor briefings, but also the quarterly calls that you may have. You need to tell the same story about AI and be consistent, because it's crucial to build that trust that we mentioned earlier. Regulators, super important point when we talk about sustainability. There's clearly a rising interest in terms of transparency when it comes to AI. It's not a formal requirement yet, but we are expecting it to become one. So the idea is basically to demonstrate already that you are ahead of the curve and that you actually already can start showing where the results are and also where the challenges are. Because at the end of the day, we're trying to make, as we say, things certain with so much uncertainty that is inherent to the complexity of AI. When it comes to customers, I just had the poll popping up. So when it comes to customers, it's very important for them to really understand what is AI role, explained simply. And when we say simply, it's really to make sure that it's accessible and it's backed by real action. We talk about greenwashing. We talk also now about AI washing. And they are able now to spot that from a mile away. So we need to be really mindful not to lose that credibility and damage your brand in the process as well. And when it comes to leaders in internal teams, what is really important is really making sure that what you're saying externally matches what you say and what you experience internally as well, which is crucial. And you need to be equipped and confident to answer those questions from investors, regulators, and customers. So this is very important that they have a clear understanding of where we stand, what we're doing, and that they can answer those questions as well. I think this is really, really important. And this also brings new challenges that we didn't have before AI's rise, basically.
Would you say there's a possibility that there's like an AI winter or a moment where stakeholders don't trust anymore any communication because the word is used too much and people don't know what they're talking about? Have you been seeing this in companies?
Actually, I don't know if if you just look at LinkedIn, we've all been on the platform, we're all using it either to post ourselves or to read through things. And there's a lot already, for example, of backlash from people trying to spot AI-generated content. And people even saying, I'm not going to listen, or I'm not even going to read or take this into consideration because I can feel it's AI-generated. And this is where the human oversight and the human in the loop aspect is super important, because as you mentioned, AI is a co-pilot. It's here to enhance what you can do as a human, right? So it's very important that even if you're using AI in your communication, for example, beyond just the reporting and everything, that you really make it yours and that you really make it in your voice, that it matches your values as well, and that it's really used as a basis as opposed to a final product, I would say.
Mm-hmm. And so what you're saying is that AI is kind of adding a new dimension to the way companies communicate. I know that you have a very great framework to share with us today and to kind of explain how what are the main pillars of when you communicate using AI, what are the challenges and how to overcome them.
Yeah.
So if you want to share a couple of insights on how to do that and what are the risks, how to avoid them, that would be perfect.
Yes, of course. And before we dive into the solution and the framework, I think what is really important is to acknowledge the challenges that we're facing. You mentioned the paradox. That's the fundamental paradox around AI and sustainability. The key point here when it comes to communication is really to be transparent and really acknowledging both sides, really without seeming contradictory or confusing. That's kind of the key aspect when it comes to that. The pace, we mentioned it already, AI evolves super fast. We see changes, new models, new use cases every day. So it's very important that whatever communication frameworks you have in place, that they also adapt because things are changing and processes also internally in the way you report and communicate your sustainability need to evolve as well. And that's also part of the challenges, right? When it comes to the expectations, it's kind of a dual expectation. We are expected to use AI to be more efficient, to be faster, to really increase our productivity and be innovative as well, but still being responsible from an environmental perspective. So really finding that balance can be quite tricky for organizations today. And the transparency gap is also something that is linked to explaining basically the technology that operates, as we mentioned, the black box already. It's hard sometimes to really understand what vendors are doing. We don't control them. We can't necessarily monitor them 100%, and we rely on them as well. And that's also something that is also a bit tricky when it comes to communicating transparently to build that trust with your stakeholders. And I think the last piece for me that is very important is the trust. You really need to show that you're credible, that you actually are you're not certain of everything. I think let's be honest here. This is a technology that is evolving fast. It's similar to when computers actually, the computers era started, but it's even faster and it's even like having a bigger impact. So at the end of the day, it's having incomplete data or not necessarily a view of what's going to come next and kind of navigate that complexity and that certainty. Because we know AI algorithms they are changing, they're evolving as well. So we need to basically play catch up, which is also part of the challenges. Staying ahead of the curve while the technology is developing so fast.
Mm-hmm. Not all AI models are equal, I guess. So some are trustworthy, other are more or less also having a footprint on the environment. Mm-hmm. And when what you think is one of the bigger risks is the risks, is that something you've been doing? Could you unpack a little bit what does that mean for company?
Yeah,
I mean, fall into that pitfall.
Yeah, it's very important because we talked about the greenwashing and AI washing, and if you are ignoring or like not disclosing that you're using AI, for example, or that you're embellishing what you're doing with it or the impact it has and also misrepresent it, then you're going to lose the trust of your customers or of your investors, but also from the regulators, and the pressure is going to rise. So it's very important to take that into consideration and to really follow simple principles to actually make sure that you're using AI in a responsible way and also in an ethical way, because this is also a big part when it comes to AI. It's changing completely the way we work. It's changing completely, the business models that we operate in as organizations. But I think the 4 points that are super important here is really the transparency that's been mentioned already. The accountability is very important. Having ownership of, the AI tools, the results. The fairness is something really important. And AI is only as good as the data that has been inputted in, right? So it's very important to not just transfer biases as well from the data you have towards AI or the tools that you're using. And I think the privacy security reasons are also very important, and about sensitive data that you mentioned. We need to have safeguards in place here to make sure that they're not exposed or misused at the same time.
Yeah. So this is the framework that you wanted to share with us today, that I think you call STORY, which is a great one to communicate ethically, authentically about sustainability and the work that you're doing, how you use AI into your sustainability strategy as well, and decarbonization efforts.
So we made it easy. We want to tell a story. The framework is going to be stories. So it's an easy way to kind of remember it. But the key point is to start with honesty, acknowledging both efficiency gains and energy costs upfront, not trying to diminish or embellish the other. I think it's very important. Tell what you can track, share the data that you can verify. Don't make false claims, for example, because if you're being asked on how you got there and you can't respond, this is where the trust goes down and it's very hard to get back. When it comes to the trade-offs as well, it's also showing how you're using AI responsibly, showing why you're using it, What's the purpose? What are you also trying to achieve, and why it's important? But don't necessarily, pretend that it's all perfect, because, as I said, it's an evolving field. When it comes to the R of the story, it's really report your reality. Acknowledge what you know and acknowledge what you don't know and what you are uncertain about. It's better to be honest and transparent than actually pretending things that are not there, and you will be challenged on. So I think the last piece that we want to say is it's evolving. You are evolving as well when it comes to AI. And it's really about communicating that continuous improvement to show that you're measuring AI. The way you measured it last quarter might not be the same next quarter, and that's perfectly fine. And that you're optimizing this as well. I think moving forward, those are important points to keep in mind when it comes to AI in sustainability.
Yeah, it's a great framework for ethical AI-driven storytelling, and there's a bonus one that you wanted to share with us, which I like, because when we at Greeny, when we supporting companies, we try to make them become industry leaders in sustainability, and we want to also empower them to use AI to become so. And the first one is really speaks to us. Think journey, not destination. We're not we're not here yet. We're not net zero, but there's this journey that's very important to start, and it's pretty urgent as well. So this framework is kind of a great way to finish today's session.
Yeah, I fully agree. And the journey, not the destination. If we think 5 years ago where we were and now where we are at the moment, just think about where we're going to be in 5 years from now. If the speed of the development of AI is just remaining the same or even accelerates. So I think it's very important that, it links to your company goals, the purpose, that you really explain why you're using AI. And yes, it has sustainability impact. But we are working towards actually improving things, reducing emissions, reducing this and that. So it's very important than just throwing metrics that not necessarily you have the full overview of. Of course, if you have them, great, but sometimes it's hard to get them right. Make it relatable. I think it's very important that you target your communication, depending if you're talking to investors, to customers, but also to your teams internally. I think it's very, very important. And stay authentic. I think that's really, try not to be someone else or another company with different values. Just stay true to your voice. It's going to be very important. And also anticipating conversation by addressing the environmental role of AI before stakeholders actually have to ask, because you're going to be in a better position to answer those questions. And of course, again, they're going to evolve, and you can also adapt your narrative around that.
Thank you so much, both of you. It's definitely another session coming, because we had so many to talk about.
And I would like to say we are not AIs ourselves, otherwise I wouldn't have been disconnected. So despite all the efficiency coming, there's still a lot of things we don't predict, and there might be more of them, right? Of course, if we don't put this tech to good use as fast as possible, I think.
Thank you so much for both of you for sharing your very complimentary insights. And I can definitely tell you, everyone, that there's going to be a next session on AI and sustainability. I know that you guys had a lot of questions, and please feel free to reach out to let us know which part of this big question you'd like us to deep dive into for the next one. And we'll hope to see you again. Thank you for joining.
Thank you so much. Thanks for the organization, Noémie.
Thanks, Alexis. Thanks, Laura.
Thank you.
Thank you, Laura, for your time. Thank you, everyone.